This is Global Order. I'm Hindolson Gupta. Bharat Karnad returns to this conversation once again on this platform. The last time Dr. Karnad was with me, it was a very, very interesting conversation, and it got thousands and thousands of views from people around the world commenting on it. And interestingly, many of the things that Bharat Karnad spoke about in that conversation, and you should go into the Global Order YouTube channel and listen to that conversation. But all the things he spoke about in that conversation, including the big question mark on India's nuclear deterrence, today, only a few months later, are more stark and more urgent than ever before, considering US President Donald Trump has recently said that nuclear testing will return in America, and of course, the kind of weapons that Russia is talking about. Dr. Karnad, welcome.
Thank you very much, Hindol.
I'm going to begin with that question. Since we last spoke, many of the things you mentioned seem to have really resurfaced in our headlines. Talk to me a little bit about whether you're feeling validated at the moment, and what is the urgency at the moment for India?
Yes, it's been India's really loss that all these years since 1998, when, by the way, it was known to the government that the thermonuclear S1 test had failed. We did nothing about it. And Vajpayee regime, especially advised by the Brajesh Mishra, then the NSA, forsook the open-ended testing regime and plonked instead for the kind of voluntary moratorium that he announced on May 28, 1998, despite an official letter from the director field testing Pokhran, Dr. What's his name? I'm sorry?
Santhanam?
Santhanam, K. Santhanam. Yes. Thank you very much. One of my senior moments. Yes, Dr. Santhanam, in fact, had written right away that it was a dud, a fizzle. By the way, that's not a literary allusion. It is fizzle is a technical term when a device or a bomb that's being tested has a yield of only 7 to up to 20%, not more. That's a fizzle. And by the way, that's nothing to be ashamed about or to disregard or to not own up to. 30% of all tests conducted all over the world have been duds, fizzles. So it's not a big deal. We are testing it for the first time. The thermonuclear two-stage weapon is a very complicated device. According to Richard Garvin, the original designer of the thermonuclear bomb for the United States, actually said that 2,000 things have to go right. 2,000 things have to go right for a thermonuclear weapon to actually explode. Now, so that is the kind of uncertainty that, in a sense, hangs over the Indian weapon, which we claim is operational, and that complete fraud of chairman of the Indian Atomic Energy Commission, R. Chidambaram, claimed that no testing was required, that we could rejig the design, even if it was necessary, by computer simulation and by component testing, which is nonsense. It's like saying that a conventional military would accept a tank after having tested its caterpillar tracks separate from a gun, which is fired separately from the rest of the armor, and then it's presented to the army without the whole thing being put together and tested and proven. Would a conventional military accept it? Of course not. A simple assault rifle, it can be disaggregated into 4 or 5 components. You have to put it together and then test it with intense rates of fire and whatnot for it to be then accepted by the troops and by the military. That's such a commonsensical thing. So how come the conventional military that puts so much, by way of testing the weapons that they induct into their services, are quite happy accepting, someone like Chidambaram's view that, well, everything is good, S1 worked, and that was that kind of nonsense. So, we have a real problem because the Indian government is completely illiterate, as is the media, as is, if I may absolutely truthfully pronounce on the military, on the armed services. They're completely illiterate. They know the conventional military and how to prosecute wars and stuff. They know nothing about nuclear weapons. The Strategic Forces Command is on a rotational posting, meaning everybody there is on a rotational posting. There's no incentive for them to learn about nuclear matters. So we are stuck in a vicious cycle, what I call an unvirtuous cycle, and we haven't been able to come out of it. So we have been offered so many provocations over the last decade. North Korea tested thermonuclear devices twice successfully. Why successfully? They got all the help from China. When Trump is talking about Pakistan undergoing, conducting tests, he was talking about component testing, not testing in terms of explosive physics and so on. But component testing is what we do too. It's not a big deal. Everybody does it. But unless you actually test, it means nothing. It means zero. And because we have conducted only one damn thermonuclear test, that's all the physical data we have, while the Russians, the Americans have what? God knows, some thousands of tests. The Chinese have nearly 75 odd tests. The Russians have some 400, 500 tests. We have one test. You have test data on one, and that to a fizzle, and we claim that we have the physics data package, metrics to design new thermonuclear weapons without going into actual physical test and proof of concept. Think of it, how completely nonsensical it is and how incredible that is. And that's the reason why I always claimed, and I think very correctly, and everybody knows and what I've been saying since 1998 when I was on the National Security Advisory Board. I've been saying, let's have an open-ended testing regime where we keep testing all kinds of weapons that need to be, designed, developed, and inducted into service. After testing it in Pokhran or wherever else, we have to therefore dig very deep, 1,000-meter deep L tunnels for us to test those kinds of weapons, even deeper, perhaps, if you're going to test a megaton, weapon which we must do. We have to have various weapons of weight to yield ratios. We have to have tailored weapons with tailored yield. We have to have weapons of megaton yield, a minimum 2 to 3 megatons. Why? Because the standard issue weapon warhead in the Chinese PLA strategic rocket forces on the Dongfeng 4s, 3, 4s, and 5s are a 3.3 megaton. A 3.3 megaton is 3.3 million tons of TNT equivalent. We have a 20 kiloton firecracker. We think we have credibility against China? Forget Pakistan. We are so damn fixated on Pakistan. What is of Pakistan? When a country is unable to distinguish between a nuisance and a strategic threat, we have a problem. Pakistan is nothing. And yet we make it out, look at all the Sindhu, there's that, everybody jumping up and down and, going berserk. And here is China, looming over us, and there's no reaction. There's no reaction since 62 when there's been the kind of humiliation. Remember, the Chinese have built the entire strategy and vision is to, in some sense, to, shall we say, rub the century of humiliation from their record. And we have been humiliated for millennia. We feel no humiliation. In fact, we are happy to be part of and complicit in being collaborators with those who have victimized us. The NPT was designed expressly to keep India sub-nuclear. Please. That was the whole point of NPT. We thank God we somehow got out of it. No thanks to the government. There was one MEA official who had the, shall we say, the temerity and the wits about him to do some bureaucratic shuffle and deny Morarji Desai's decision to close the weapons program during the Janata Party interregnum in the late 1970s. So we were that close to losing everything. Because the government is illiterate, and he talked about Gandhian values. Are Baba, what value, what relevance is Gandhi to any of this? I don't know. So, we have to rethink everything. And I see your wall has that Gandhi there. He's one of the great frauds in the country. He is a fraud. And by the way, I so dilate on it in my first chapter in the book I'm writing. He's an absolute fraud. If you go into, I've set up, I've gone into it a bit in Nuclear Weapons and Indian Security, my big tome of a book. But now I'm getting into more of it because this guy is lionized. He's the father of a nation. This guy is the arch collaborator. British called him our recruiting sergeant. British Army called Gandhi our recruiting sergeant when he was in South Africa in the Boer War. I mean, this is a man we lionize and we raise him to high skies. I give up. It's just emblematic of the fact that we are simply not strategic minded. And that's why I always claimed when I talk to the military audiences and so on and so forth, that, if we don't have the strategic brains, we don't have the strategic sense, then let's do this next best thing. Imitate the Chinese. Can you at least imitate? Because we imitate the Westerners very well. We take the metrics, we use the language. Don't we speak English very well? We do. We are fabulous. That's the reason why we are heading all the companies in the West. Well, very simple point to make is that we are not strategic minded, and that's why we don't even think that we are strategically at a loss when we confront China.
I have a question to ask you, and perhaps you could delve a little bit into this, Dr. Karnad. And last time I thought of asking you this, then I forgot. You had mentioned, and you mentioned in this conversation again, that Chidambaram and Brajesh Mishra and others somehow, either I didn't understand or I don't know what kind of intentions they had, but they sort of prevented greater testing, which is absolutely necessary, as you just explained. Could you delve a little bit into why Chidambaram and Brajesh Mishra would have thought this way? Or do you think it's because of external influence? Do you think it's because of some lack of strategic understanding within them? What was the problem?
No, I think basically the problem was that Brajesh Mishra, who was a diplomat, as you are aware, he was an IFS man, and most of these are generalist types who do history or some liberal arts thing out of somewhere, and they become, get into the foreign service, and then they assume they know everything about everything. This is a technical subject. Nuclear weapons is not a joke. It's not something that you read up on an op-ed. Most of our so-called secretaries of the government get educated through op-eds, if you may believe it or not, because they have no sense. They don't read it. They know nothing. So what do you do? Why did, basically because starting with, Vajpayee and starting actually with Narasimha Rao and his principal private secretary, A.N. Verma, they decided that we needed to tilt west, meaning turn west, do what China did, benefit from the access to the American market, etc. It's fine. We needed to liberalize our economy, which we did. Our socialist structure of PSUs and all these wretched public undertakings where India's taxpayer money is just goes down the drain is still there, even though that's not been affected, even though they have been corporatized. What that means, God knows, because they don't turn any profit. So how is it a corporation if they don't? Shouldn't they be just wound up? Would they survive in a free market? They shouldn't, but they do, because the Indian government is still loath to shut them down, as Modi should have done when he came into service, and some of us were hoping very much that he would do. The reason at that time was that overarching note, we needed to be close to America, and America's price was that we put a lid on our nuclear programs, and that's a very simple exchange of interests, where we say, okay, fine, we will sort of contain our nuclear ambitions, even as, you give us access to your markets and help us with technology and so on. By the way, has anything happened? Have Americans given you any decisive technology over the last 30 years? No, which is what I said then. All my books since then have been saying precisely this. America is unreliable. Why is America unreliable? Why does it use countries like soiled tissue paper? For a simple reason, because they can afford to do it. That's what they do. They use China. And now China uses them. This is big power politics. We are not in the big power league, even though we assume that we are. We are some kind of big power. We are not. We are an inconsequential power simply because we are unwilling to envision ourselves as a great power. Envisioning great power is not talking about being a Vishwaguru or some abstract notion like that. It means taking risks. That's one thing the government of India doesn't do, because these are generalists who know nothing. And for them, if you don't know a subject, what do? You take a median line, do you not? Basically, risk-averse line. It's what happens with most of the government of India decisions. And that's how we have landed ourselves into this trouble. Who is the one who negotiated the 123 agreement with the United States, the Civilian Nuclear Cooperation Agreement? Jaishankar, who was Joint Secretary of Americas at that time. He gave away a right to test. Why? Because the Americans conditioned their nuclear cooperation, so-called, which basically meant they're trying to sell us Westinghouse AP1000 reactors, which they were not willing to put up. Why? Because their own Atomic Energy Commission said there were safety problems with them. They were going to sell those reactors to us and calling it civilian cooperation, and they, in exchange, gave up a right to test because they accepted the condition that for this so-called cooperation, we will not test. So while someone like Jaishankar, I mean, what does he know? Now, Jaishankar, I must say, was very influenced by his dad. And his dad was my colleague in the First National Security Advisory Board. We drafted the damn nuclear doctrine together. There were 2 or 3 of us. The rest of the people were just sitting around on a listening brief because they knew nothing about, all the 3 armed services chiefs and so on, and others, whole bunch of people there, 2 foreign secretaries, and they just listened. Because they understood they couldn't participate. They didn't know anything enough to participate. They'll make some banal statement now and then, that was it, and a complete disregard. And we went on with drafting the goddamn thing. The point to make very simply is this is a specialist domain. In a specialist domain, generalists really have to rely on specialist advice, which the government still doesn't do because there are no specialists in the government or in Bach or Trombay. Why is there no specialist? Because these are nuclear scientists and engineers. They don't know anything about strategy. They can put together a bomb, put together a delivery system, put together command control software, but they cannot, for anyone's life, configure strategy. That's a political exercise. That's a skill that most countries have developed with the cadre of officers who have done it. That's why I've been pleading for nuclear specialist cadre officers in the 3 services, each 3 of the armed services having a specialist nuclear cadre. Instead, we have what I've just described to you as a rotational posting in the SFC. And by the way, we are relying on these guys in the nuclear crisis. My God, I break out in cold sweat every time I contemplate that kind of contingency. So the short point you asked me, I kind of go off on a jack simply because there's so much, the other factors are all there that impinge on the government and on our outlook and on our approach to security, nuclear security in particular.
I want to talk to you a little bit about something you mentioned. Just before I came on to this interview, I was watching Mr. P. Chidambaram of the Congress Party talk in Parliament at that time, imploring the Vajpayee government to essentially not take the nuclear route and essentially make this point that we are this great Gandhian secular country and this is not the path that we want to take and this is against all our supposedly our moral value principles. This kind of argument is made even today. Why are we plagued by this, Dr. Karnad?
Look, we have had this great failing of moral posturing. From the very beginning, you had the same fraud Gandhi you have there. He gets my goat every time I even look at the chap's face, picture anywhere. I think you should take it down for the sake of the country and your own sane interest if you contemplate what he actually did in terms of history and so on in delaying our independence. But that's a separate thing. The point to make really is that I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I was listening to Mr. Chidambaram.
The morality, everything into morality play. how do you bring in morality, pacifism, and values and norms of that kind, you know, into foreign policy and national security? I mean, it's all very well to wax rhetorical. And we all do. All countries do. We all for peace and we all for this, that, and the other. In actual terms, you go out and kill each other. That's the reality, right? It's all this, this rhetoric of being a pacifist nation. And I mean, does anyone really believe India is a peaceful society? No, I mean, come on. Yeah. I mean, there's no more violent a society than Indian, by my reckoning. Every faction is against every other faction in society. The fault lines are so severe. What is caste? I mean, you'll just have a Bihar election, we'll have the damn results tomorrow. I mean, what has happened there? This is 21st century, and we are talking about caste and caste-driven politics. And we talk about morality, where people are killing each other, literally, quite literally killing each other. You know, Hindu against Muslim, some lower caste against upper caste, beating up on everybody. God knows what's happening, you know. And we talk of ourselves as, in some ways, symbols of pacifism. I mean, isn't there a basic hypocrisy built into our approach and outlook? And that's been the case from the very beginning. In some sense, because we had no power, we tried to make morality our weapon. That's how we've used it. That's what I've argued. Nehru was very good at it, with his Oxbridgian accent and all very well, and it had tremendous traction with a certain Western audience. Oh my God, yeah. And there's Gandhi, the wretched fellow, going in loincloth everywhere. And I'm completely Churchillian in apprehending Gandhi as a complete idiot and a naked fakir and worse. But the point, I think, is that if you're going to be convinced by these kinds of notions of Indian superiority based on abstract notions that are self-benefiting and self-propagating. No one thinks of us as non-violent. No one thinks of us as pacifist. We do. So we have projected successfully that we are a pacifist nation. I mean, everybody forgets all the violence that happens all the time, every day, every year, every month for the last 70 years and for millennia before that, right? And we forget all that. But we are now set ourselves up as some great exemplars of peace and morality. How do you turn national security into a morality play? In an ideal world, sure. In an ideal world, it's not going to come. In a system of sovereign states, it's not going to happen. So all countries have to then therefore keep to the lowest common denominator, the basest values. I'm sorry to say. Here, there's no point in talking about, the higher values and norms that befit our supposedly very fine country that has tremendous whatnot. I don't know. I can't make anything head or tail of any of this. So I'm not obviously very receptive to these kinds of ideas, and have never been. I'm rooted in reality. People call me an ultra realist. I don't know what that means. There's only realism and there is fiction. There is, something called faction, meaning facts that sort of merge into fiction. So all kinds of things happen. It's not reality, all right? And we seem to be suckers for it. I mean, even after 1998, what did people say when we first tested in 1974? Oh, we didn't expect this very moral country, the passive. We become victims of our own advertisements. Did we not? Did the West not turn on us and use morality against us? How could a Gandhian nation be? Because you had precisely the kind of idiots like Morarji Desai, who said, yes, we are Gandhian and therefore we should not have a bomb. So this is the point. Somewhere we've not woken up. 80 years after independence, we are still, mired in this complete. I'm unable to even express what it is we are mired in terms of the sludge, this moral sludge. We can't seem to get out of it. Never. And China, we have tails between our legs. We are genuflecting, please don't do anything. To America, we are again, oh, please don't do anything. Please give us H-1B visas. Please give us this. We are fucking supplicants. Are we not supplicants all the time? Isn't that Indians? Aren't we beggars? Should we be self-respecting enough to at least admit that our image is that of a beggar, a supplicant? We are supplicating all the goddamn time. It frustrates me. It frustrates me because no other country, and I've been, I did all my schooling in America, so I understand America very well, better than most. And I said long ago in all my books, don't rely on America. Why? Because I worked with people who actually pioneered nuclear thought in America. During my graduate days, Bernard Brodie, he was the arch pioneer who drafted the doctrine for US Air Force nuclear warfare. My God, these are the people who were at UCLA. Now, whom I worked with. Now, this is the kind of stuff that you have to face. They were ultra realist. There was not an iota of mentality. There was not an iota of obfuscation. They're very clear that this is a weapon, a new age weapon, that had to be handled carefully. And therefore, we needed to use our inductive and deductive logic and do everything possible in this milieu, new milieu of the atomic age, to advance our interests. Because they were a great power, they were able to do it with comparative ease. For in India, we had to be far more focused, which we were not from the very beginning. Though that said, Nehru also did some very great things. As I chronicle in my Nuclear Weapons in Indian Security, he's the one who nursed the nuclear weapons, what they call the Janus face nuclear program. Janus face is the Greek god that looks in two opposite directions. The god with two faces looking in opposite directions, peaceful and military. And this is how he crafted the nuclear weapons. But when it came to it, he did not make the decision to weaponize. This is how we always fail. Can you imagine the world, what a different world, and how India would have been placed had Nehru accepted the great Homi Bhabha's advice in 1962, after we were beaten, humiliated by the PLA. Our army ran away from the Thagla Ridge, which was at the 4 Corps, literally broke down under Patania, Major General Patania, and ran. It was a dismal state of affairs. And Bhabha went to Nehru and said, this is all there chronicled in my Nuclear Weapons Indian Security, the book. And he said, and he was the only one who never served Nehru. He said, Bhai, allow me to test 62. Allow me to accelerate our program and test. It'll raise the morale of the people. He didn't say that it'll project India as a coming power. That didn't needed to be said. Had we just blown a goddamn atomic bomb, because that October in 1964, Nehru dies in 1964. In the spring in 1964, we have a plutonium reprocessing plant commissioned. We had the damn plutonium for a weapon by the time Nehru died, a little bit of it. By October, when Chinese first blew, October 16th or 14th, whenever it is, they conducted the first test, 1964. We could have followed very soon thereafter or by the next year with our own. Can you imagine what a different world India would have inhabited then? You would have been invited, please come into Security Council, what else do you want? Arey Baba, don't. It's like what did Lyndon Johnson say about adversaries? It's better to have the adversary inside the tent pissing out than outside pissing in. He was a very earthy man, Lyndon Johnson. And that's what he said about adversaries. And India would have been the country outside pissing in and destroying most of the superpower systems they had built up to perpetuate their power and interest. Had we weaponized, had we even weaponized in 74, Kissinger has said, had Indira Gandhi gone ahead and weaponized fully, we could have done nothing. And yet here was Indira Gandhi, the man in the cabinet, as they said, having cold feet, with advisors like P.N. Haksar and P.N. Dhar and all the Kashmiri mafia, who didn't have the strategic sense to say anything, not appreciate nuclear weapons for what they were, what they are. They are the ultimate adjudicators of power. Until, as I've argued, something new technology comes along, a death ray or some damn thing. That's going to come. God knows what's going to come. I mean, did anybody foresee artificial intelligence? No. 10 years ago, we couldn't foresee artificial intelligence. We talked about it. There were some articles in science journals and so on. But now it's right there in our lives. So the point very simply to make is, if we are not, if we don't have a singularly an outlook that says India is besieged. We have a mentality, such complacency. Will be $1 trillion economy by 2035. About all this. Yes, but what happens to your damn economy if you can't protect it? And what is the first charge on government? The first charge on government is security. First charge on government is not, whether you can build highways. North Korea is nothing. But damned if it hasn't shaken America in its boots. What does, I'm just saying, does any leader pack the kind of respect that Kim Jong-un does now? Every word that he speaks out of Pyongyang is heard with rapt attention. Why? Because the fellow can, deliver a thermonuclear ICBM on Los Angeles tomorrow, if he so wishes. And everybody fears that he will do it. Because he's so uncertain. He'll say, tomorrow, yes, I'm going, so I'm going to take America with me. What happens then? Tantan Gopal, America will be up at the creek. They can't do a thing. Cannot do a thing. They've tried everything and they've failed. The CIA has been at it all the time to try to kill the guy, do something or the other. He's done nothing. First he said that I'm going to take out Guam when he had intermediate range ballistic missiles. Now that he has an ICBM, he said I'm going to take out the Hwasong missile that he has. Now can take out Los Angeles. Now do you think some fool in Washington, even a Trump, will risk such an eventuality by upsetting Kim Jong-un? What does Kim Jong-un have to offer the world? Nothing, except the ICBM, the fear of complete precipitating a catastrophe. That is the kind of...
I don't know whether you've seen, sir, the scenario that you're painting. The Americans have obviously been thinking about it, and so much so that it's even percolates into Hollywood. Because it's a new film on Netflix exactly showing this. It's called The House of Dynamite. It shows this North Korean missile launched, and the Americans are not able to prevent it. It finally lands in Chicago, most likely.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Catherine Bigelow, the great director of Half Dark 30. That's a tremendous. It's a woman, by the way. Now, this is a woman who has feet rooted in absolute cement. She's so rooted, she understands, right? If you go in the 50s, there were other films like Failsafe or 7 Days a Day. And they were fine for their time. There was paranoia at that time. But here it's real. Kim Jong-un is real. His capability is real. He has paraded it in Pyongyang. The first thing to march on the Great March Past, as you may have seen, that he staged was the ICBM. Huge, massive thing. You can see the bloody thing can go down the earth and drop on a nickel. Who do you think has aided them? The Russians have aided him. Because they know that even if the Russians don't pack credibility with the Americans, Kim Jong-un does, because he doesn't care to get anything from America. He wants nothing from America. He tells Trump, you come here, walk this side of the demilitarized zone. Remember who stepped in? Not he didn't step into the South Korean side of the DMZ on the 39 parallel or 38 parallel. Who stepped in? It is Trump who stepped in when Kim Jong-un said, come this side. So the point very simply to make is not, we try to be great finessers of policy. You have Jaishankar. I dealt with his father. By the way, his father was so wrong for so often. Finally, someone in his own family said that Subramaniam was wrong. Who said it? Jaishankar's brother, Sanjay Subramaniam. A historian at UCLA. He's in UCLA, professor of history at UCLA. Tremendous guy. his intellect was as great as his father's. I dealt with Subramaniam, K. Subramaniam, and I entirely respected it. He was a tremendous, in a sense, he educated himself in military matters. He was a normal IS guy. His BA was in chemistry or something from University of Chennai, Madras then. But he was an autodidact. He taught himself military. He taught himself nuclear things. I had to go through courses at UCLA and so on. This civil servant taught himself. There are not many civil servants of that caliber. And Jaishankar certainly is not. An intellectual thing, Sanjay Subramaniam, you should read. He's done some fascinating work on Portuguese colonialism in India. I mean, real archival stuff, real advance on knowledge and stuff like that. And what did he say recently in Granta? Look up his interview. He says, my father was wrong. He completely misread the world that we are in. And this is the world that I had said would happen. Please read my 2015 book, Why India is Not a Great Power Yet. Read my 2018 book, Staggering Forward, Narendra Modi and India's Global Ambition. What do I say? America is not reliable. America is a rogue state. America will do what it wants. And he called America a rogue state, Sanjay Subramaniam, exactly repeating what I've been saying. So, and here is his brother, who is a foreign minister, ex-foreign secretary, who negotiated that wretched 123 agreement, running our thing, still relying on America to pitch India out of trouble. I mean, come on, there has to be a limit to our, what is the use? Cupidity? Not stupidity, cupidity.
Romantic notions, essentially.
Sorry?
Romantic notions, essentially. Romantic notions.
Yes. I mean, and his father was completely wrong. And I used to argue with K.S. I used to tell Subramaniam, we have had umpteen discussions, and he used to respect me because I used to oppose everything and I used to substantiate it. Not everybody has opinions in Delhi. Everybody is into opinions. What is your basis for your opinion? Nobody has. Oh, I read somewhere. That's not how opinions are made. Here in India, and policy is made by opinion mongers. You have an opinion, you become policymaker, you make a policy. This is how things work in India. That's not how things work in more settled, advanced countries, where the whole research units, there's not a single person with nuclear expertise in the entire government of India right now in the PMO. There isn't now. I know all of them. I mean, as far as I know, there isn't one. If there's some secret guy there feeding some great wisdom to the Prime Minister, fine, that could be possible. But nobody knows anything. So if nobody knows anything done is right. What is that great thing that was said by Lewis Carroll in the Alice in Wonderland? He said, if you don't know where you're going, any direction you take is correct. Is that right? Remember? One of the greatest satires, political satires ever. I keep rereading Lewis Carroll all the time for its pungency and relevance to the modern world and certainly to India's situation.
To this announcement by President Donald Trump about tests that are happening in Russia, China, Pakistan, and the need for America itself to bring back testing. How do you see it? For a lot of people, this once again brings back an extremely volatile world, because indeed, if America restarts testing, then then many others would too, and quite openly. And this would then again propel us into, already the world is very unstable because of the wars and so on and so forth. This will be a whole new dimension of instability. How do you see this?
Well, we are not caretakers for the world. We have to look out for ourselves. We somehow think we owe the world something.
So do you think President Donald Trump is right in saying that the US should test again?
No. What US does should not be the trigger or a prompt for us to act in our interest. Is what I've been saying. North Korea has tested. There have been enough provocations over the past. We have evidence of Chinese giving thermonuclear materials to Pakistan. There are all kinds of materials. What you do is irrelevant. Other countries will do what is in their interest. And for Pakistan, they don't have to do a thing, because they're going to be handed things by North Korea and by China. Literally, they're going to be handed a weapon. And then you'll say, oh, we didn't even know. How did you not know? In 2016, I talked about the rogue triad of, China, especially, and North Korea and Pakistan. They've always been together. The thing you have to begin to admire in Pakistan is they're extremely focused. You may not like what they do. You may not like that they're anti-India and they're going to screw us. But damned if they don't do it right. In terms of their focused activity, they are going to screw India. Very simple, one-point agenda. They screw you. Right? I mean, how can they be faulted? I don't understand. Right? They cannot be faulted. Now, do we have anything like that for India? For China? Other than having tails between our legs, I mean. Right? Right? We have nothing. We keep beating up on Pakistan. When you don't know, as I said, if you don't know to distinguish between, and I've been saying this exact words for 30, 35 years to military, if you don't know the difference between a nuisance and a threat, we have a problem. We have a problem. Do you hear anybody in the Indian government talking about China? Other than, oh, yes, we will release Chinese, allow them to bring in rare earths, and yes, will you please give us this, that, and the other, lithium or something. I mean, our entire dependency is now from America to China. The two worst states as far as India is concerned in terms of furthering your interests. America doesn't want you to advance, neither does China. There they combine. And you have no solution for it other than to just blather on about God knows what, what we're talking about. I don't want to get into that nonsense, but you know what I'm talking about. It just goes on. Everybody is into fairy tale living, everybody's into a fairy tale, I mean, academia, I mean, I read op-ed, I don't even read newspapers anymore, complete rags. I mean, it frustrates me no end. And of course, nobody wants to listen or allow. I mean, it's not a complaint. I don't care. But the point is, none of my writings are featured. They don't want it because it's just too damn provocative. I mean, it just steps on everybody's toes. And then the next thing you will have is Amit Shah on at their door. So who wants all that shit? It's better not, okay, you do your blog or do whatever you want to do. That's fine. They leave me to do that. But the point to make simply is, where is the contrary opinion? Where is the contrary view for the people to make up their minds? Yeah, sure, I can do it with podcasts like yours, and that's what I do. But then that means nothing. And who reads books anyway? I write big tomes. Everybody says, Bharat, you write 500 pages. Kaun padta hai? Precisely. No, precisely. Right? No one has patience to go through any detailed thing because everybody's into opinion mongering. And my books are more appreciated in the West, ironically, where everybody goes through, they read, because think they matter, right? They understand the difference between opinion and substantive scholarship. They understand. But here, the complaint I get actually from people high up is, Bharat, ye kaun padega? 700 page, are kaun, I mean, it'll take me 3 years or more, God knows, I don't know. I'm just saying. So nobody is interested in serious decision-making content. They'll have brush fire things, like the MEA. The policy planning is zero. Right? They have a policy planning unit. Who are they staffed by? People who don't want to get out of Delhi for whatever reasons. My child is going to school. I don't want the schooling disrupted. Argentina. I don't want to go to Argentina. So put me in policy planning. By the way, that's exactly how it's staffed. Please ask. Right? So this is how policy. Now this is policy planning. No,
that's scary.
The policy planning in America is the key for foreign policy. That's where policy emanates from. Now, of course, in the Trump era, it emanates from singularly the head of this one man. But otherwise, it emanated from the policy planning cell. People like Richard Haas and others actually created policy options for the president to decide. Here, the policy planning is to get out of whatever contingent circumstances these foreign service officers find themselves in. Someone doesn't want the schooling disrupted. Someone doesn't want to go to Burkina Faso or something like that. Someone else has some other complaint. They say, okay, yeah, this is a parking slot. Bad job, policy planning. And then they use the policy planning to try and get better appointments. If not Burkina Faso, something better, maybe Hanoi. This is all and this is policy planning they do. I mean, so where is the content fillers of policy? Everything is, you know, fly by wire, basically. Essentially, that means you just wing it. Just, वो क्या हो गया? The Pakistan में, it's all bushfire dousing operations. All of MEA. And this told me about Natwar Singh when he was. I said, Natwar, what do you do? He said, I don't do anything. There's some damn thing happening every now and then here and there. We are into bushfire, dousing operations all the time. So that's the entire activity of MEA is that. There's something happening there, some crisis erupts, everybody goes and focuses on that. The next thing happens, they all run around there. So this is not foreign policy. So if no one is looking at strategic long view, then what happens to the country's interests? Then they become, shall we say, they become victims of the latest pressures from here and there. The FTAs that are being signed right now, left and right. My God, the FTAs, has anybody read the provisions in them? Apparently not. Because all government procurement is now going to be foreign bidding and tenders are going to come in for government procurement at the local, state, and central levels. Do you know how much that is worth? People don't even know. $700 billion a year are now going to be sourced from abroad, meaning foreign bidders have the freedom now. And do we have reciprocal? No, we don't have any reciprocal thing. So how did our great Piyush Goyal in the Commerce Ministry, does anybody question? No, we are fine. Chalta hai, very good. Next we'll become a superpower. Yeah, this is how we become superpowers? Hey, welcome to, as I said, fairyland and fairy tale living. You see, you make your own reality and you live in it.
One question, if I may, Dr. Karnad. A lot of people speculated that this announcement that President Donald Trump made came right after the, repeated reports and, of course, statements made by Vladimir Putin too about Russia's new nuclear weapons. And I'm, of course, referring to the Burevestnik and the Poseidon and so on and so forth. Could you throw some light on your opinion? Because opinions seem to have differed on, different camps about this. Some people, of course, feel that this is extremely threatening around the world, indeed also to America. But some people feel that perhaps there is a bit of an element of a bluff packed into these that Russia is doing, especially at this juncture of the Ukraine war. I wanted to get your opinion on this.
Look, a lot of people have been hurt by underestimating the Russian science and technology sphere. A lot of people have paid a very big price for it, mostly in the West, because they underestimated precisely the kind of nonsense that is now. We are such suckers for Western propaganda that we tend to believe the sorts of things that you have just now been talking about. The Burevestnik, the nuclear-powered cruise missile, is really an extension of something in the Cold War that the Americans had. They conceived of it, and then they gave up because of the impracticality of it. And it is a nuclear-fired missile, right? In those days, there was no cruise missile. There was a ballistic missile or by the way, it was a US Air Force project. And all the Russians have done is they have taken that and to say, okay, we'll put it on a nuclear power, which basically means it can perennially be on trajectory, on a path, forever, for the rest of its life, right? And anytime anybody misbehaves, they drop the damn thing on whoever they want to drop it on, And by the way, one of the greatest Russian strengths are precisely what are featured in the Burevestnik, which is what? Metallurgy. It's one of the great, great Russian ex-Soviet strengths. It has great strengths in ruggedization, which is again what you need in the cruise missile. If it's going to fly around for the rest of its life, it has to be rugged. That's why the T-90 tanks are rugged. You bring in an Abrams tank, it'll falter in exactly 15 kilometers if it goes at battle speeds. Why? Because they have to have flat land, they have to have all the things, and the soldiers, they have to go into a canteen and drink beer and all those kinds of things. The Russians are not used to that kind of shit. I mean, the Russian troops, if you think Indian troops have it bad, you should ask the Russian recruits where they're not at all pandered, right? They damn well have to rough it out. And that's why and the weapons represent that kind of mentality of resource scarcity, right? And so when they talk of Burevestnik, they actually absolutely have the technology. What is the main thing in the cruise missile? The miniaturized nuclear reactor. The miniaturized nuclear reactor. I don't at all put it beyond the Russians to have actually devised it. You can see the photos now. It's about, 20-meter long stuff. The photos are there. And you can see where the reactor could have been placed and so on. The point is, I do not put it beyond Russians. Because what they have produced and what they have given to us are fabulously good weapons for us, have proved. We may all Air Force, our Navy and all may be hankering for Western goods, but damned if these things are not rugged and suitable for our conditions, for our resources. So they have always produced very good weapons, reliable weapons. The MiG-21 that has just been phased out of the Indian Air Force is such a tremendous aircraft. Some idiot called it coffin maker or something like that. That person didn't know his ass from his elbow, because it is one of the greatest aircraft ever produced, bulk aircraft. It was a beautiful supersonic aircraft that people who rode it and who trained on it, who flew it, swear by. By what happened with Rafale? Yeah. First day of Sindoor, doink, went down. Right? All this big thing. How many aircraft did we lose? I said in my blog on the very first day, we lost, the exchange ratio was what? About $1 billion plus on the first day, with the loss of 3 or 4 aircraft, which is proven, by the way. I mean, now we can say what we want, but this is the kind of stuff. So had we lost, the question is, what kind of weapons do you want ultimately? Right? Rugged weapons that are cheap, economical. Not refined weapons where, when pilot sits in a damn Rafale, he's sitting in a sofa, at home where everything is all lit up and very nice. Ergonomically, they are perfect. But tactically, are they suitable for us? Shouldn't someone be thinking? And what's the premium we are paying on the kind of Rafale? We are 300, 400 crores per unit? Per aircraft? One damn Meteor air to ground costs, you know how much? As much as a goddamn, an aircraft, Tejas or something, half the cost of the Tejas. One missile. And this is what we're going in for. And then we say, oh, हमारे पैसे नहीं है, 42 squadrons नहीं है. अरे, कैसे होंगे if you misspend your money? कहाँ से आएगा पैसा? कोई आपको देगा? Are you going to be, someone going to be, open up their khazana and say, you go buy whatever you want? Which is exactly what has happened. The government opens up its khazana and says to the Air Force, go buy it. The Air Force and then everybody else goes in and then makes merry. Jo chahiye manmani. They buy whatever they want. Who decides in the government whether the choices made are the right ones for the country or not? It's the same thing. I'm jagging off, but the point to make very simply is this, that we seem to, again, the same thing. We don't seem to know what we are doing. We don't seem to know what we're doing. It is, you are Air Force Chief, you do something. I am Army Chief, I do something else. The Naval Chief does something else altogether. And when it comes to actually fighting, nobody fights. A 3-day war, is it a joke? Is anything 3-day can be called a war? It reminds me of what Andrei Gromyko, the Russian foreign minister, told Indira Gandhi on the second day of the 1971 war, the acme of our military prowess, right? What happened? Indira Gandhi is all hyperventilating, calls up on the horn to Moscow. Oh, we need more stores, we need more supplies, we need more this, we need more that. And the Gromyko said, Madam, calm down. By the way, Gromyko says that in his memoirs. So I'm not, again, opinionating. He says, Madam, calm down. What you fight are not wars. A war is when you lose 20 million people. A war is not when something starts and you jump up and down and come back in 3 days and say the war is over. And we have won. Pakistan has said that they have also won. So obviously there are no losers at all in any war that we fight. Right? I mean, this is a farce, right? Now, if you laugh, it's because it's a farce. Why call it a civil war? Just say it's a camp operation, give anything, but understate everything you do. We overstate everything we do. A 3-day little dust up is a war. If something lasts more than a fortnight, God knows what it is. I mean, by way of escalation in language, what would you call it? If a 3-day is a war, what would you call a 3-week war? And then what would you call a 3-year war? I mean, you see the point I'm making? Because we overstate everything.
What about the Poseidon? What about the Poseidon? I mean, what?
Look, all the weapons that Putin talked about 5 years ago as super weapons, they said we are going to make them. And he has now got the Borisvesnik and the Poseidon.
You think the Poseidon actually exists?
Of course. In prototype, I absolutely believe the prototypes exist. If you're asking me, are they fielded? No, not yet. But it's a matter of time. Like everything else, they don't go on like us on computer simulation and modeling and this and that, like that idiot Chidambaram. They go on actual thing. They fire, they'll say it doesn't work, they'll rejig it, fire again, it doesn't work, do it again, fire again, works. That's it, we induct. We do nothing of the kind. S1 test, nothing happened, the planned yield for S1 was 250 kiloton. And what happened? The yield was 42 kilotons. And he said it's a great success, we're now a thermonuclear nation. I mean, everybody's laughing. Oh, right, next you'll claim what? So, okay, this is the kind of stuff that our science, our technology, our military...
What the Russians have said, after what the US president has said, after what the CIA has subsequently said, do you think it is absolutely urgent once again for India to consider starting testing?
Absolutely, yes. Must, it's urgent, it's belated. We are almost 30 years too late in resuming tests. So we have to test, because by the way, we don't have, when people talk of that, again, that Richard Chidambaram again, I hate to bring the bugger up every time, but he said simulation testing. Arey Baba, how do you simulate a thermonuclear test? A thermonuclear weapons, the explosion physics, it's an extraordinary complex physical phenomena. The two-stage is a fission weapon blowing for the thermonuclear fuel surrounding it to conflagrate, catch fire, right? And the heavy water nuclei to fuse, that's what fusion means, to then release such extraordinary, amounts of energy as to devastate everything. That's what thermonuclear is, right? Right. Now, if you look at it now, our people when we say thermonuclear, it is Brahmastra. And I say I don't know whether you read my Nuclear Weapons of Indian Security or not, but Brahmastra in our Vedic texts, and this is what Oppenheimer quoted when he first saw the explosion of Armageddon. I've become death, the destroyer of worlds. Forget the fact that we didn't have technology at that time. It's nonsense to think that we had technology, but we had the imagination. We had the strategic imagination, our ancients. What has happened to us? What has happened to us that we can't conceive of anything that is not foreign related or foreign derived? Have we invented anything? Look at China. They said, the Americans said, no chips. Will not give you the NVIDIA chips. Will not give you high, capacity chips. They said, fine. What's the next thing the practical Chinese said? I in the same chip, how can I compress the information? That's how DeepSeek happened. They reverse the technology thing. They, okay, we don't have the chips, fine. With this chip, what do? We have to make do. We have to do something. Compress the information. The quanta of information now fits the thing. They've created a thing. They've outflanked the ban. What do we do when there's a ban and sanction? Oh, we have to be something karna, compromise karo, give up everything. You want to take a house, take that also. You want to take, I could take everything. Just let us be. This is the attitude. This is the difference between a great power, which China always thought it was, and India, which always thinks of it as a great power when there's no reason to. There's no basis for us to think that we're a great power. And yet we keep on pretending that we're already a great power, or if someone is slightly bit more, moved in reality, he'll say, we're on the cusp of great power. Arey Baba, the difference between cusp and actual is, in our case, about 50 to 100 years. That's a fact of life. No, so you just now you talked to you're talking about. I'm sorry again. I keep typing.
I wanted to, Karnad, if I may, coming towards the other topic that I wanted to discuss. There is a lot of conversation, including in today's newspaper, the day we are recording this conversation, which is the 13th of November. There is a lot of conversation about the Neoma airbase. There was conversation about the Aini airbase that India supposedly lost, and later on, actually, the MEA clarified that India has withdrawn from that base. And now there is talk about the Neoma airbase in, of course, Ladakh. I want you to talk about both those two things. How much of a strategic loss was the Aini airbase? And I want you to talk about this Neoma airbase and, says for this continuing confrontation between India and China. Because you see, in the Indian media, once again, there is this drumbeat that no, things are getting better with China. Perhaps they are getting better in some ways. We've restarted flights and so on and so forth. But the confrontation exists the same way. Nothing much has changed there. And people seem to have forgotten that.
Yes, absolutely. Look, the Aini, it was originally we were in Farkor. There are two bases, by the way, just so people don't confuse, because we are so confused all the time between all these foreign names. We don't know what is what. So something is in Africa, whatever. Farkor was the original, which is also near Dushanbe, the capital of Tajikistan, right? When Aini became available, because it had a longer tarmac and so on, we took over, and the Tajik said fine, and the Russian said fine. Yeah, that's great. Well, Tajikistan, all the Central Asian republics are still very much within the Russian ambit, right? So they said, yes, good. So we put in over $220 odd million to resurface, to put in facilities, the air traffic control that needed upgradation. We had done all that. We did all that. We even stationed for a while, or episodically, we stationed our Sukhoi 30 MKIs, which is a tremendous thing, because then you have a real pincer, whether on China, because from Sukhoi MK-33 MK is taking off from Aini, you had a straight line to Lopnor and the Chinese nuclear complex and other kind of targets, strategic targets, which is very, very useful to us, and which is what China was very worried about. That's why they've consistently put pressure on Dushanbe to vacate Aini of the Indian presence, which they succeeded doing because we didn't have the wit to cultivate the regime in Dushanbe, right? Give them incentive. What does incentive mean? In Central Asian case, like in here, you give them commission, give them money, put some damn money into the Swiss account, whatever they wanted. We could have done it. Because it's strategic, that's how you work, right? We're not living in a fairyland of ideal Gandhis running around all over the bloody place. So what we have to do is, we have to see what the world thinks. What is your demand, dear? Batao kya karna? You want a Swiss account? We'll fill it. You want something else? We'll do it. It's a normal thing. Everybody does it. That's how half the government of India secretary, they all, how? Because their children get free passes into Ivy League universities and so on. Everybody. By the way, this is Manishankar Iyer, just so and I state this in the book, all footnoted. People run amok when they see my footnote. They can't refute anything. Manishankar Iyer said 92% of the foreign service have their progeny abroad. 92%. right? In America, in Europe. So do you think they are going to be very dispassionate about weighing the American role or the Western role? Or would they say, we'll just make some, no, they are very good people. We believe in liberal values and they do this and that. So this is how it happens. So this is how we should have done with Dushanbe. We don't even learn from what we are taking, we are manipulated by commissions and whatnot, all kinds of corrupt deals. We know corruption very well, right? Everybody is very aware of corruption. And the masters of corruption are all in the government. Bureaucracy, the bureaucrats and so on. They shouldn't have turned that, okay, at least to some account, okay, we get money from here. Here, let's spend our state money to get Dushanbe on our side. We didn't do that. They succumbed to pressure. Aini is now lost. A vantage point is lost. We now have a much more difficult route to Lopnor, which was really the thing that we had straight line access to hit Lopnor. Chinese were very worried when we stationed, for the first time, the Indian Air Force did something halfway imaginative. They're usually into fighting Pakistan and running around here and there, right? So the thing is, for the first time, as I've been saying, we stationed your goddamn Sukhois there in Aini. They did. I've been saying of Navy, what are you doing around coastal Karwar, Parwar, and all that nonsense? You should be in the South China Sea, in China's face. Put your goddamn aircraft carrier that you hanker for in Nathram. That's been offered to us, has been an offer for 30 years. We haven't done anything. This is how we should do. If there's an enemy who takes advantage of you, counter it by doing things yourself, as I've been saying. The nuclear missile armed Pakistan, nuclear missile armed every state on China's periphery. Who is stopping you except yourself? And your idea of a moral India, an India that keeps to the norms generated by whom? By the West, for their interests, not to further yours. So how come you don't do things in your interest, as the Chinese did in their interest? Nuclear missile arm Pakistan, finish off India. Now we are stuck. What had we right away done? Well, I remember when I was in the NSAB, K. Raghunath, the Foreign Secretary, came before us on a plenary session. I said, Mr. Raghunath, and Subramaniam was in the chair on that occasion. I said, Mr. Foreign Secretary, why have you not considered reciprocating China's gesture of nuclear missile arming, Pakistan by nuclear missile arming states on China's periphery? Let them sweat bricks as we have been vis-a-vis Pakistan. You know what this gentleman says? I imagine it's recorded somewhere in government file, and I'm now giving away highly secret information, which of course I've written about and I've been talking about for 30 years since my time on the damn National Security Advisory Board, the first one. Therefore, no one knew. When we were like, they didn't know how to handle this, therefore we were derosted very fast. Ye to bahut hi garbad ho gaya, is this K. Raghunath says to me, Mr. Karnad, is not practicable. I blew up. I said, practicable, Mr. Foreign Secretary? Here's China screwing you, and you are telling me for us to screw them back is impracticable? There are more countries on China's periphery who feel threatened by China than there is a Pakistan that feels threatened by India. Let's screw them by getting nuclear weapons, strategic warheads, before arming yourself and the Strategic Forces Command. Arm these guys and see how the Chinese sweat bricks. They'll be up and, begging for mercy. Please, okay, we'll do whatever you want. We didn't do anything. And now we are here, the Chinese merrily take our land. What I've been saying all this while, Washington Post has now published, I don't know whether you've seen that article, yesterday's article, that they have been, using our own concepts of buffer zones and all that. They've captured all that. It's all there in my book, what I've been saying. All that, nobody reads books. Now, that's the great thing about India. No one knows anything. Everything comes from Washington Post. Now everybody's Washington Post dekha hai. Use your common sense. Analyst hai nahi koi. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry.
The Foreign Secretary said this. As in, why is it impractical?
I'm sorry?
Why did he say it was impractical? What's the logic? As in, but there must be a reason why it's impractical. Why is it impractical?
I asked Raghunath that. Yeah, and K. Subramaniam being another civil servant trying to save the other civil servant's ass, he said, Bharat, he leans over to me and said, no, Bharat, you just go slow, don't go rough on him, it's okay, because he can't say anything, he's just, foreign secretary. That's what K. Subramaniam tells me. So I deferred to him, I said, okay, he's in the chair. He's telling me, please, Bharat, let it be. Let's go, what can he say? He said, okay. Now, this is a guy saying, and I can't even, then now this chair shushes me up. Right? Maharaj Rasgotra and others looking into their pants, you see, saying, Kya khatam kar raha hai? What is he saying in these plenary sessions? But this is how no one takes anybody, there's no accountability. No? You say something, why have you said it? Okay, policy planning. What policy planning? I just told you what the policy planning cell is. Arey Baba, how do you come up with these responses? Impracticable. Did he actually think through before he said it to me in response? I don't think so. He said it. He said, "Oh, yeah, India and all that non-proliferation crap." So no, it must be impracticable, right? So we wing it, and I've just told you that's how policy is made, by winging it. When a real and hard response should have been, okay, China, you have done this. You have set the precedent. We are merely following your precedent. And we are going to arm all the states who want nuclear weapons on your borders with nuclear missiles, so they can hit Beijing, they can take out Shanghai. Finally, the government got the gumption to arm Philippines, and I've been saying Vietnam with BrahMos and so on. After 20 years of my pleading for it. Did anybody else plead or make it? No. Finally, they woke up, haan yaar, kuch ho sakta hai. Now what's happening? Philippines is asking for more BrahMos. Now everybody's lying, we want more, we want BrahMos. Hey, Baba, put the nuclear warhead on the BrahMos. We have it. Then see what happens with China, then announce it to the world. The Indonesians have discovered, or rather invented, nuclear warhead of their own. They are such great people, tremendous scientific power, Indonesia or Philippines. Why not? Why not? We give them a leg up also. You're a tremendous thermonuclear power. You can do anything. You have miniaturized the damn warhead. Now you're on a BrahMos. Oh, India merely provided the delivery system. We invented, and we back that up. Manila tomorrow basks in the fact that they're a nuclear power. And we're all happy the Chinese are sweating shit, you see, out there. Right? What are they going to do? Right? Exactly what Pakistan has done to us. This is how we should reduce China. If you think you're going to beat China in Ladakh on the LAC by putting your 14 core and augmenting your 14 core, you will be destroyed out there. Because they're on a 14,000 altitude on the Tibetan plateau, have always been. We have to climb up to 14,000 feet. For our operational reasons, this is the way to do it. Switch the theater, switch the approach. Of course, you have to have things there. Of course, you have to have all kinds of stuff. I mean, why? Remember, we captured the Kargil Heights. Not Kargil Heights, sorry. The Kailash Heights in Ladakh. Kailash Range Heights, right? Who did the capturing? The Tibetan exile community people manned in a special frontier force, SFC regiment. Who can take high altitude? Our people from Bihar and plainsmen cannot go up there. They die of pulmonary edema. It's not easy to try running up. What do they say if you go to Leh? Have you been to Leh? Yeah. Well, what do they tell you? Don't take for one day. Just relax, because you'll go. Yeah. Correct. So this is the sort of thing we don't do. Acha, you ask about Aini. I told you we have lost it. Neoma it was originally a satellite airfield. Now we have built it up to a base, which is good because we are it's very near the what's that old big old whatever the damn thing, up there. Yeah, near the Karakoram highway. So Neoma is very much there, and we have some access to that. That's fine. We have some strategic airfield that can take heavy and sustained. We can stage air operations out of Neoma now. When you say you are a main base, that means you can stage operations. You have pre-positioned petrol, you have pre-positioned oil, ordnance, all kinds of things, underground, YEVO, so they're not immediately vulnerable, etc. As far I hope that's what they've done when they say that
So this
Myanmar.
is to big all you're saying, right?
Yeah, so there it's an all-weather, they're converting into all-weather and stuff like that, which basically means you have to de-ice it all the time in the winters and so on and so forth. You know, constant de-icing is required. For every flight, you have to de-ice it. Otherwise, you lose aircraft. They slid right off and go into the mountain. So this is good. This is a wonderful thing. But it's still ancillary to the main effort. It's a very good thing that you have now an air component to your land vector. But the point is, it's a very good thing. Otherwise, you have to operate out of Chandigarh in the plains, which is not bad because if you operate out of the plains, you have the advantage of a higher payload capacity. Because when you take off from Neoma, you are hindered by the same kind of factors that are hindering the PLA Air Force, which is what? You have to decide how much fuel to load up and how much ordnance. You cannot have max load of ordnance and fuel. So you have to compromise. When you take off from Chandigarh, you can actually maximize both. That's why you have slight advantage when you operate from planes rather than from Neoma. But Neoma is good because you have instantaneous air vector that you can activate. So it's a good thing. You know, anything that we build up is a good thing. So Neoma is a good thing.
My last question, Dr. Karnad, in this conversation, as always, it has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much for your time. Great learning every time one speaks to you. My last question, when you look at India's current security situation, once again, we are talking only a couple of days after nearly, more than nearly 1.5 decades, there's been a terror attack at the heart of Delhi. Are you apprehensive that, in a sense, we are going back to older times, that our security apparatus is again looking rather, questionable, especially on fighting Islamic terrorism?
Well, look, the point is terrorism cannot be completely eliminated, right? The kind of the very dense population densities our cities have and so on, it's very easy for terrorists to come in and so on and so forth, have receptive milieus or create assets here and stuff like that. Long back, I remember Hamid Gul telling me, General Hamid Gul, when I'd gone to Islamabad way back earlier in this millennium, and he said we have 300 sleeper cells in India. He told me that. Of course, every time I went to Pakistan and came back, I was debriefed by Special Branch RAW, which the Pakistanis knew. So this was the way to convey, this is how signals are conveyed to each other. And I said to the general, yes, but we may have sleeper cells too. He said, we know, and we're damn well out of our head trying to hunt them down. As we are hunting them down, this is the game of nations. It's all right. It's what Miles Copeland long ago talked about as the game of nations. But that's okay. So terrorism per se is not preventable in the sense that if every incident, if you think that you can prospectively preempt every terrorist incident, it's physically not possible. It's physically not possible. It's too large a country. Delhi is too big a city, too many people. What are the things you're going to police and monitor? There's only so much Delhi police can do, or the Intelligence Bureau can do, or the RAW through their external, intelligence inputs can do. I imagine we have informers all over the place, and that's why we get to whoever are the perpetrators very fast, which is remarkable, given the kind of population that we are faced with as a targeted population, possibly complicit population, etc. So, see how long it has taken for us to contain the Naxalism in Central Asia, Central India and the Red Corridor. How long? And that's a countryside, wide open countryside. Why did we take so long? Because we didn't deploy the special forces. As I've been again saying, I remember writing on the CP, they asked me to write in the CRPF journal or some commemorative journal. And I said there, what are you doing sticking to the roads? You have to send out special forces to fight them on the ground, right? That was too much for CRPF. They didn't use my article. You know, "Arey Baba, ye kya bol raha hai," you know. Well, everybody is used to luxury, na? You sit in air-conditioned rooms and then you pontificate of you're going to send off details here and sit. You are tethered to the logistics line. If you're going to be special force, you have to live off the land, eat snakes, scorpions, whatever the thing the land offers, and live and hunt down terrorists and insurgents. That's how special forces behave. Except we are again falling into the American trap. Their special forces have to have the SPX canteens, and they have to have their Mars candy bars and all this shit. No, I mean, who's going to do all this? Special forces are special forces for a reason. They live off the land. And CRPF did not like it. They did not use my article. Now, finally, when they got the, oh yeah, this is what they have to do. They got the results. They send off the greyhounds into the field where you're incommunicado, which is the greatest. People don't know this in Vietnam. Most of the US military got beaten, shitless by the Vietnamese. But which was the one group the Vietnamese were always very afraid of? It was something called the LRRPs, the Long Range Recon Patrols, that lived off the land and were incommunicado for 6 months at a time, 3 months at a time. They just went out and hunted the Viet Cong and the Vietnamese and killed them, and were killed in return. But there was no logistics line giving you chapatis and sabzi and all that shit. This is what happens with our. That's why it's taken so long. Well, no one wants to depart the roads. Everybody's tied to the road. You go 1 kilometer outside, you say, oh, we, and they run back and to eat chapatis and whatnot. It doesn't work that way. You see? So this is actually the reality, right? Nobody knows the reality. If you don't know reality, whatever you're told is reality. So this is the problem. So see, now that they have legitimately deployed the SF and the police SF, and it has worked, and now it's contained. But the point to make about terrorism is precisely that. You cannot prevent terrorism. Nobody can. Right? Even if your absolute intelligence ki bhai hone wala hai, are exactly kahan hone wala hai, kis time pe hone wala hai, what are the means that are going to be used, are still something that you cannot predict. After it's done, you say, okay, they had an ID. In this case, what happened? They must have mistimed the fuse, because it blew up while they were trying to park the car. Terrorists are like us now, complete bhondus and screw-ups. If they can screw up, they'll screw up. So you can depend on these guys to screw up, and they screwed up, right? Instead of having a lot of casualties, they ended up killing themselves, which is not a bad thing. More such people should be encouraged to go into terrorism, simply because, they'll kill themselves off, then, it saves us the job of killing them, something, eliminating them. So, but this is the fact, na? Now we know that doctor, whoever it is from Al Falah, whatever the damn university, or medical doctor, whatever, this fellow didn't know, he timed the fuse wrong. Lucky for us. Otherwise, you would have had mass casualties. Instead of 8 people dying, you'd have had 200 people dying. Please. Serious stuff. Then there would have been halla gula, ho, kya ho gaya, the whole damn thing is wrong. We just lucked out because those guys are great screw-ups as you are. So they screwed up, right? They didn't time the fuse right. Now it worked to our benefit. It's wonderful. Now everybody's taking great thinking. Yeah, we had advance notice and this. Nobody had any advance notice. It happens. It's very difficult to predict these things. Terrorism is not containable anywhere in the world by anybody. Let's be very clear about it. It's not an Indian situation. Terrorism is not containable. You can, however, take ample precautionary measures to make it more difficult for the terrorists to operate. That's all. More informers, more surveillance, more CT cameras and all this, that, and the other. Sure, all that works. And I suppose that's the way to go to contain terrorism.
Been a fascinating conversation, Dr. Karnad. Extremely educative as always. Thank you very much. I was saying in the first interview that you and I did that a general told me that usually everybody disagrees with Bharat when he says something very vehemently, and 10 years later, Bharat is proved right. With the announcement of President Donald Trump that the US might start testing nuclear weapons, once again, it does seem like once again, a decade later, you might have been proved right again. Thanks very much for your time, Dr. Karnad.
2.5 decades later, not 1 decade later. I've been saying since my time in 1998. So testing is a normal thing we should have done. No other country forsakes nuclear testing when you have these kinds of results in your test and then you claim that it worked. It doesn't work that way. Everybody is recording what you're doing. And then if everybody says you're not able to do it, but you alone are saying, yes, we are thermonuclear, then you have a problem. So nobody else was convinced, as you know. Everybody said, what thermonuclear? The damn thing was a fizzle. And Dr. Iyengar and great scientists here told you that there's a partial thermonuclear burn, which I first revealed in my books, and so on and so forth, where Dr. Iyengar talked to me. And they said there's a partial thermonuclear burn. I'll end on this note. What's a partial thermonuclear burn? Just so people understand. It is if you have a fireplace, right? In a winter, high winter, you have a fireplace. You bring a log of wood, which is wet, and you try to light it. What happens? What happens is parts of that log of wood, which is wet, will actually catch fire, but the whole log will not burn. This is what happened. This is what partial thermonuclear burn was, which was achieved in 1998 in the S1 test. So parts of it worked, a small yield, which is what 42, very small ounce. If the real thing had blown, it would have been a huge, big thing, which would have, shall we say, substantiated our claims to be a thermonuclear power. So this is what partial thermonuclear burning means, as I just explained. And this is how it was explained to me using the log metaphor by Dr. Iyengar, which I'm now conveying to you, which is there in my books. So yeah, so we should not claim what we are not. If we can honestly look into ourselves and see our own deficiencies and try to correct them, rather than pretend that we know everything, we have done everything right in the first instance, everything goes right. It doesn't work that way. No country has got it right the first time. No country. But somehow we think that we are above history and, we are into that sphere of make-believe. And Indians are good at it, into make-believe, We have had science like this from time immemorial. What is new about thermonuclear weapons? Nothing new. We had it. What is airplanes? We had that also. Viman, what is that? Pushpak Viman and all these things. So, we have to have some sense of humility, cultural humility, which we don't have, which is what upsets everybody else. Do you find any friends amongst our neighbors in extended areas? Everyone has been influenced by India, but no one claims any connection to India. They don't want anything because of our present day avatar, which is what, claiming where nothing exists, we claim. It's just normal, be modest. And if you have actually had some great success, sure, ballyhoo it. But if you have had no success and you ballyhoo it, then everybody said this all pretense and nothing more.
Thank you very much once again for a wonderful, vigorous conversation. As always, no doubt we'll return to have many more conversations with you, Dr. Karnad. Always very educated. Thanks very much.
Thank you.